I'm John Farrell,
And I'm Joshua Holt.
and together 15 years ago, we started WellDatabase.
We thought we'd have it done in a week, but it turns out we may have underestimated it a little
Yeah, there's been some ups and downs along the way.
bit. But we learned a lot, and this is our story.
You're our first recording of a podcast ever.
Yes.
Have you've been on the energy pod? We both did the energy podcast together.
We did.
Whatever energy data, the energy
Sites.
yeah,
Yes.
Bobby and John's,
Yes.
Which-
Just last year, right?
maybe.
Or is it old man time?
Nah, probably. Bobby's moved on, so I don't know if they don't. I don't know if they do it anymore.
But I've just seen John.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I keep in touch with both of them. But anyway, welcome. This is a very limited run. We hit kind of around 15 years since we kind of got started with WellDatabase, and so we thought it would be really interesting to kind of recap all these pieces here. So this is only about just the startup from beginning to today and everything along the way. So the better place to start than the beginning. So do you remember? You remember we were sitting, we shared an office, a closet. Yes.
It was a closet. No windows.
That is important to note because that was one of the biggest hurdles that I did not foresee, that I had zero network of anyone anywhere in the industry that I was selling into.
Right. Absolutely.
And
So we didn't go to the conferences at the time, really.
no, we didn't interface with
We
customers.
didn't interface with customers. We were in a service company managing IT. And so, yeah.
Right. We were writing software. We were dealing with lots of data.
Yeah.
And so we understood a lot of what we were doing, obviously.
But we didn't realize we had zero.
And that was, and we also, I think we completely had in our heads that the sales aspect of a tech company was stupid.
Yeah.
And that
Build it and they'll come.
right, it was a field of dreams.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was it. But do you remember? Do you remember when how that went about? How that went down?
So from my perspective, I remember that we were coming up for renewal, and I don't think I was in the meeting. I can't remember if I was actually in the meeting or if I'm just like imagining how it went down. But we had started building software for our ERP at the company that we were working at,
Mm-hmm.
and we wanted to integrate pulling in some data, and we needed an API from the current provider we were using, and they basically were like, oh, we don't have one. We're not going to build one. And we were just sitting there like, well, that's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And the pricing was going up as far as I remember. I believe you were a manager at the time, so I'm not sure I was privy to pricing, but that it was going up substantially. And so we're like, hey, this is something we can do. Let's just try this on the weekend, see if we can get this together and pull it into for our system that we needed it. Like our use case was just an API to pull in the data.
Right, just data.
Yeah, just data.
But I'm going to take you a step back from that. Do you remember, because you and I had been working at this time, I would have been, when we talked about this, I probably would have been 26 or so. And you are 3 years younger than me. Is that right? So you would have been 23.
Okay.
So we had been working at it 4 years already.
Yeah.
And so we had at other companies and stuff. So
yeah.
You and I had always talked about starting a company. Like,
oh yeah.
do. And so one day we sat down and made a list,
we did.
ideas for the companies that we could start. And WellDatabase was not on that list.
It was not on.
Yeah, I don't. How funny is that?
One of the ones that I wish we would ever run with was this Picnotic.
No, that was the choice. It was Picnotic.
Yeah.
And I did. And I tell people this all the time. We invented Instagram just before there were smartphones. And so it turns out that Instagram without a smartphone is
pretty pointless.
Yeah, pretty useless.
I had a logo and everything.
We did it. It was fun. And it was a great idea. Hence Instagram's, multi-billion-dollar situation. But that being said, you take it back. It was flip phones, cameras. So we were talking about SMS, cameras, and taking pictures.
Had our Windows.
Yeah, we did, right? And then even Blackberries at the time. I don't think Blackberries ever had cameras at that time. I don't think it was till later. But
the Windows phones, like the keyboard slide up thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, those were awesome. HTCs, like that.
Yes.
But do you remember why we ended up not doing that?
Well, we made a site
It was
and a logo, and I don't remember anything beyond.
it was when we dove into the cost of doing direct SMS from the server.
Because you do.
It was
You didn't have Twilio in that. Back then.
it was absurdly.
You had to license it from like AT&T,
Right.
and yeah,
It was insane. And so we were like, we can't do this. This is going to take $100,000 to get off the ground. And I said, yeah, that was, but still, I hadn't forgot about it because I still tell people I've been at Instagram. So, yeah. Anyway, but then, yeah, the Well database, what would be the Well database equivalent was Online Petra. That was, and the name dropped that one. Yeah, anyway, it was.
I mean, that was a vision because that's what we were familiar with at the time.
That's exactly right.
We saw everything moving towards the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, we can get ahead of that. And if we did this here, and everybody can just.
But isn't that funny too? Cloud, like, the cloud wasn't a term that.
We saw everybody moving towards putting things on the internet.
Right. No. Well, and that's it. And that even harkens back to like Web 2.0. I remember when Web 2.0 came out, I was like, oh, the thing I've been doing for 5 years. Okay, cool, whatever.
Dynamic HTML.
Oh my God, that was so good. So yeah, you are right though. Like that was the straw that kind of broke the camel's back towards that direction.
Yeah.
And because we still had the idea of all the online tools and things that we wanted to do, but we had this weird data problem that we were like, this is ridiculous. And I think we were talking about it. We were like, all the states are online now. Like before, it wasn't the case. Like it was not easy to get all the data, and so. Yeah, we said we'll just go write some jobs, we'll grab the data, and we'll throw it on a map, or not even on a map.
We're just gonna grab the data and have an API.
Yeah,
our first version didn't have a map.
Did it not? I thought it did.
Or maybe it did have a map.
It had a map and a list, basically, and
list and no top navigation for anything else.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
You had well spots and a list, and we used dynamic clustering that was just awful. Remember how we back and forth on the client and server side clustering things, and that was challenging.
That's challenging.
It's not that much better today. Yeah, clustering is a funny one. I'm still to this day, I never understand exactly why people want to see 6 million wells on the screen.
Makes a pretty picture.
It's just a picture, though. Like, then that's what we say. It's trends, and I was like, clusters show you trends too.
They did,
and so
you have to do fine grained clustering
but then you see trends on a base, not on a country. Yeah, doesn't matter. But yes, you are right. And I never tell people the price on this, but I don't care. We were paying $60,000 a year at that time, and we had 4 people with licenses. Right. And I won't say the company name we were using, but it rhymes with Milling Bimfo. That was the best I come up. Anyway, but it was 60. We were paying 60, and then they bumped it to 90, like overnight. And so that's that 50% bump I keep talking about.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a smaller company, $30,000 is ginormous.
It's huge.
And at the end of the day, I think the biggest driver for me was that I feel like I didn't get in trouble, but I kind of got in trouble because when it happened, I wasn't the one that signed off on those, even though I was there.
You were in the meeting.
Right. It was going through someone else, and we were discussing it. I didn't have the contract. And so when we determined that, like, well, it's too much, we can't do that. And then we went back and they told them, they're like, nope, it's already renewed. And
it's already done.
Yeah. And it was only exacerbated because they felt our aggravation. And they came into the office with our salesperson. And I remember walking in there, and it was like this 22-year-old kid at this table who was their salesperson. And he was like slouched. He was like sitting at the table, like just completely like not give a shit at all about the fact that we were upset about anything. Yeah. He just, but that was how they worked back then. Anyway, but you were right though. We were like, let's just go grab it ourselves. And how long did you really think it was going to take?
I mean, maybe a month we'd have something out. I like to say a week, but when I talk about it, but I did in reality know that we're going to take longer than that. But yeah, because we were doing nights and weekends. I know, like, kind of thing. So you have that reality that, you only get like 4 hours tops in a night if you're working nonstop from getting home to bed.
Yeah, well, and it's important to note, like, so at the startup time, when we decide that we want to do this, I have 4 kids.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm married with 4 kids. You have 1.
When we started, I didn't. Wow.
No? Okay. I thought it was right around that time. Though.
Yeah, it was right around that time.
So, okay. Yeah, I might just be off a little bit on the days. But regardless, we became family. We were not like 18-year-olds in the dorm doing
Right.
this garbage. We were actually like trying to make this happen.
Yeah.
And that's a great, I mean, it's just so hard. It's one of those things when you bootstrap a company.
Yeah.
It's so challenging to find the time. I mean, you don't have money.
Right.
I didn't come for money, and you didn't come for money. We just had started. It's worth noting we did have a third partner, Dwayne.
Yeah.
He was obviously very involved in the early days. He doesn't work here anymore, but still, we
He had his own business going on too, so he
Right.
was doing stuff.
Oh, he had
Lots
3 kids and that kind of thing too. So I mean, you talk about having 4 hours after work. Well, I mean, not if you have the wife and the kids, and then like, so you've got 4 hours after they go to bed if you want to work until 1 o'clock in the morning, which is kind of how we had to do it.
Yeah, I do know I started getting more of that once because we kind of had the, periods of working on it and taking breaks and stuff. And I know once we had gotten back on it, it might do.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having, 5 kids, 4 kids.
Well, and yeah, I mean, down the road, we'll be able to talk more about that. Getting started, it's really interesting. You have so much energy. You're so like gung ho on this, and so it doesn't feel like work, which is fun. It's nice, but at the same time, it really was way more. I think for me, I thought that all of the state sites would look different, but they'd all be showing the same data.
Right.
And I don't think I'm alone in thinking that back then. I mean, like, hey, they're all got well names and fields and API numbers.
Very solid set, because it's also what we were looking at. Because if you think about it from our lens at the time, I think we pulled these specific points, or we needed these specific points, and we're like, surely this is all just available, right, ready to go.
Yeah, because we had these data structures just sitting there for the applications we had done in the past,
right?
And so we knew what the data was
exactly, and you figure that's all reported, right?
Right, and it is ish, kind of
in their own different ways and different systems.
Well, and that was the other thing too, that I think that in my naive startup mindset, like I did not contemplate the notion that we would need a system for running jobs over and over, to scheduling them, for error checking and retries, then, normalization and ETL processes on top of this data. And like, for me, I was just like, well, we, write a script, grab the data, set the script run schedule, and we'll be all right. Yeah. And I guess in a perfect world, that's not that crazy.
It's not
me, but
then you want to add rules and cleaning and all that stuff on top of it. You find out the data's terrible in its raw form,
and different types of data are updated at different frequencies, and scheduling becomes a little bit more complex. And then there's inner workings of priorities of jobs to make sure things happen in a particular order, so that the subsequent jobs have the references needed to accomplish what they need to do. So all of those pieces, I mean, those required day one. Like, and I didn't contemplate all of those.
Yeah, Dwayne and I kind of had jumped on that. I think we had created 2, but we didn't realize we were working on it as a nice meet. Sometimes we didn't talk. I think we both came to one of our weekend meetings, and we had duplicated work accidentally. So when we're talking enough, and that happens, I think we both had created like a system, our idea of how we needed to handle all this stuff.
Yeah,
I remember that. And
which idea did we land on?
We ended up going Dwayne's.
Did we? Do you feel bad about that?
Well, we no, Dwayne's was good. It was great. We ended up needing a little bit, because the idea of work creating work, and mine originally had work delivered, work back, so it was more of like a pipeline. Yep, and so
I got it.
We've ended up having to go some way back towards that, but the basic ideas and concepts were the same,
right?
And Dwayne had actually put more time in his.
Right.
So that's why I was like, well, you did more already.
Yeah, no, you talk about getting gung ho. Dwayne, he dove in head first and put a lot of time into it.
Absolutely, and that's what I mean. His was like a ready to run system. Mine was like a scaffold of ideas and of how things could work. His ran.
From a UI perspective, I'm not sure that our controller systems have much different UI than they had back then.
Very different. It was a Windows format.
Was it? Okay.
Dwayne wrote that Windows format, and he had the interfaces that we adhered to, and got the jobs in there. Remember?
Yes. Now I'm remembering that. Okay.
That was originally the Windows format that we wrote, and he had the full thing running.
I think I was mixing that and our file service that we would create was a similar idea.
Yeah, similar idea. We had that full thing running, and then his was like a loose scaffold of rules that we had to adhere to make these jobs. And then eventually we roll to, we'd see these patterns emerge, and we created the higher level concepts of these jobs that do specific tasks.
Yeah.
Right. And that was all still, but still underneath there, a lot of the original code is there.
Right. No, I definitely can see some of that. I mean, I think it makes sense to underestimate those types of things. What would you do differently outside of take on an easier task?
Choose an easier company to start. Yeah. I don't know. On the data side, specifically.
Well, I mean, just in the beginning, because I look at it and I'm like, we probably should have scaffolded out chunks of data and chunks of UI and got it in front of somebody quicker.
Yeah, no, for sure. For a public product, we get in people's faces faster.
Right.
Because we
didn't at all.
We didn't at all. We built stuff out and then just like in a vacuum created a couple in like a little simple UI, and we're like, okay, this is good. And then we didn't get in front of anybody.
Right. No, but then we were just so focused, like we thought that we needed X amount of data before we could even start talking about what we're doing.
Right.
I don't necessarily disagree that that's still the case, but at the same time, I feel like who we were competing with in that market, we feel like we couldn't compete if we didn't have a certain level.
It was an all or nothing kind of thing.
That's right. And I'm not positive that's not 100% wrong, but at the same time, we didn't get it in front of anyone fast enough to validate the idea. There was no lean startup aspect of this whatsoever.
I will say that I feel like I remember us talking to people and you can't do that. Right? Like, it's a dumb idea.
A little bit, but they were.
I know specifically talking to people that were like, yeah, it's a dumb idea.
They were lacking vision.
Yeah, no. They didn't think you could compete in the market.
Right.
And so, I mean, they weren't wrong, but the way we ended up going in, changing the way the market was, because we could have gotten in.
Well, but that's another tricky thing that I will say, that we were coming from the tech side and we thought the market didn't make sense because they were working in a very old school, very corporate setup.
Yeah.
And in our view, the internet had kind of democratized these things, subscriptions, the barrier to entry had shrunk significantly. I could go, I mean, at the time, Netflix was DVDs, but I could go sign up for Netflix and have a DVD in my house in 2 days,
right? Yeah.
With no problem. And we're not, I still think that's not, I mean, that's the way most things work. Now, the corporate America still does not necessarily work that way across the board, but it does on a lot of things. I mean, Office 365, you can go negotiate with Microsoft and get license. I mean, and if you're massive companies, maybe you do, but that time and energy is probably better spent elsewhere, because you could go ask for mass licenses and get discount pricing and move on and be done with it. And so there's no reason you need to go through those steps. Yeah. Now, even like a Snowflake today, we still have to go thugh a contract and an annual. But you don't have to, I guess. But you
don't have to. But there's just, you don't have to for anything, or even like with us, right? But there is discounts when you commit to a thing.
But those discounts suck. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, they're.
You want that Q% discount? Go to town.
Exactly.
But and so here's a question for you though. Like, would you have attempted going back now to go find any capital to get started?
That is one regret I don't have.
No. Do you think we would be able to get capital if we tried back then?
I don't think so. I think. No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I remember talking to
Hugh. I feel like because I was trying to think back of my mentality or just my feelings back then, and I just don't think it was. I remember talking to a couple of people, and the sentiment when I talked to people is that they didn't think it was possible, and so I think I've been door shut, I guess.
Right, and I did, and this would be years later, but I did sit in front of, I mean, not too many years, but like the very, I was in a couple different venture capital places, and they basically said that you are trying to solve something that's not a problem. We don't think this is a problem.
Yeah.
And so I disagreed with them politely.
Yeah.
And so, but still, it's a tough one. And to this day, though, they look back, like, I think funding is just a challenging, and there's no one size fits all answer to it. But it's just when you want to do something different, then funding a lot of times is going to be challenging to get.
It's gonna be very, yeah. You have to sell the vision, and
yeah, well, and they're risk averse.
So risk averse,
So,
right.
I mean, unless you're going straight, and if you're going to a VC, then their whole name of the game is make their money back. They got like this
window.
window, and they got to 10x their money in this window, and so it just means that you focus is solely on money and growing, and it can't be on innovation. And I mean, sorry, ideally they go hand in hand, but in reality, that's just not always how it works. And so you have to prioritize returns over innovation, and I don't think I would like that.
No, everybody. I feel like the people that I know that taking funding, it's a treadmill. It becomes somebody's job constantly. Even I remember working at other places where we were somewhat getting business loans. I mean, it's a similar kind of concept, and you're like having to sell why the company needs this loan to grow and all this kind of thing. And it's the same idea, and it was somebody's job to be out there trying to hustle for it. And on a small team, both technical founders, nobody wanted to. Three of us being technical founders, nobody wanted to have that job.
Yep.
And so it was easier to build and prove it before you.
It is the nice part. That's what I tell my kids too. It's like what I love about programming is that you sit down with nothing and you spend your time, you give it time, and what comes out of it is a product. It's a an application, and then would go on to save people potentially. At this point in time, someone just said it in a talk we did yesterday that he saves countless hours every week using WellDatabase.
Right.
We have over 20,000 people on our platform now.
Lots of people's time saved. Right?
If one person is telling me countless hours, and let's be honest, it's probably 3 or 4 in a week. But come on, that's 3 or 4 in a week. And, you activate that I could say 20,000, but maybe our daily active users. But still, we're saved. If we look back over time, we have saved literally probably decades of people's time
and money.
Yeah, and and that all came from literally there was nothing one day, and that's what I love about it.
That's awesome.
So,
what would you have done differently? Is there anything that you look back on and wish we had changed along the way?
I wish we would have gotten to revenue faster, any revenue, because we'll talk about this later, but we would be years before we took in a dime. And I think that, again, us being very technically focused, we focus so much on the product, which is great. But when I say revenue, I think take on another partner who would have been the business side of things, who could have really helped driven building our market and our customer base, because we lack the network.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, technical people always devalue the sales side of things, and salespeople devalue the technical side of things. Yeah. At the end of the day, they're both extremely important.
No, absolutely. That's one of the lessons learned, right? Because I think that at the time, we would never have said that as a thing. It was the field of dreams, like you said earlier.
Yeah. So, no, that's my biggest thing I would have changed. Would have brought on an additional partner. I don't, who cares, but it would have someone drive the business side of things. And I think, it was just gone much. We would have accelerated some of these things.
Yeah, doing something other folks done.
Right. And if nothing else, we're getting customer feedback on it. We're eventually driving new revenue and helping us grow faster. And so neglecting the business side, not valuing the business side, the commercialization side of things enough, it's probably the thing that I'd change.
Yeah.
So it's starting. It is I know people have it. I think when you have that entrepreneurial mindset that, you just have this idea, and like I said, we had a page of ideas.
Right.
Maybe not a page. It was a dozen or more. Right. And it is just, you had to pick one and just start going, and that's half the battle, just getting started.
Yeah. So many people don't ever get started.
Right. It's easy to talk, but, put the money where your mouth is.
Yeah. Taking the actual time and going deep on something, even more than just MVP even.
Right. No, so that's it. I think that's a wrap on our first section of this series, whatever, the kind of getting off the ground. But can you believe it was that long ago?
No. That what we say? Just 15 years?
Yeah, and I made a post was on LinkedIn. Like, I don't know if that's a fair thing to say with any real startup that starts up in bootstraps because we'll talk about this. Like, there's these ups and downs, and like you can say, well, we didn't make our money until next year. We didn't all quit our jobs so this year. We didn't did so. Like, when does it actually become start in earnest?
Yeah.
Right. So I think you could have, in my mind, I've got like 3 different frames of the idea, when we got our first dollar, and when I got to quit my job to do it full time.
Yeah, those are big milestones.
Yeah. So, those are the ones that I kind of do those. So depending on what you're looking at, I believe the first time we ever talked about it probably was more like 17 years ago.
Yeah, and that's where I go back to. It's like that time frame.
Yeah, I remember that. And then our first dollar was more like 13 years ago, and then 10 years ago was really, especially for me, where it kicked off and such.
Yeah,
and then this kind of modern thing. So, but yeah, getting started, and they do, valuing the full, looking at the business, as a business, not just a startup, a neat product, a pet project, it's the business.
right.
And everything from how you handle your accounting, how you handle your business, your sales, how you set up your structure of your company, your agreements, your legal agreements. I mean, there's all these aspects of it, and they all deserve equal kind of footing to start with to make sure you are set up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. We weren't focused on any of that.
No.
Absolutely zero. No.
But we were focused on a product. If you're going to focus on only one,
we were building something. Because I have seen it the other way, where I have seen people starting a company, trying to get something off the ground, and they're so focused on that business stuff that they're actually not building the thing that they're doing, and they'll get just mired in that.
Right. And then I see where they do, like, they focus on the business, they raise capital, whatever it is, and then they go back and they're just like out offshoring and building a house of cards that can never be sustainable and can never be scalable.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not thinking about that. They're just thinking about dollars. And they all deserve equal consideration in this startup.
Yeah.
So if you're starting a company, give you balance.
Balance for everything.
Balance. All right, we'll get back. We'll hit the next one. Thank you for listening, and we'll be right back.
Thanks for listening.
When you were a kid, did you do the thing where you put it in and snap your fingers?
Well, I mean, I didn't drink a whole lot of beer when I was a kid, but
no, but you have like Coke tops, right? And things like that, like any bottle cap.
Oh yeah. Hey,
what's? Hello there.
Oh, I didn't see you.
Well, I made up my part. You make up your own damn part. I'm John Farrell.
And I'm Josh Holt.
And together, 15 years ago, we had the bright idea to start a company.
And it was a terrible idea.
I already said it was bright. We can't say it's terrible. So,
do you remember your parts?
No.